Hey everybody, wanted to let you know that my new book, Hometown Titan, Build a Local Business That Dominates Your Market, is now available on Amazon and has already hit the bestseller lists. We're going to be coming out with Audible soon and hoping to get it into some bookstores, but it would mean the world to me if you went out and got your copy here today, because in this book, I tell never before told stories on my 12 plus year journey in the moving industry. So go get your copy today, Hometown Titan, Build a Local Business That Dominates Your Market, and tighten up.
And it's come to me to find direct parallels between the quantum world and leadership and things that we want out of our life. So, we all heard, many of us in the business world know the book Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich. Well, I really wanted to know, why is it that if we think of something, it can be brought into the world? Like, what is the scientific reason behind that? And I'm on the discovery of finding that it exists in the quantum world. You're a human being, not a human doing. And so when I sit down and coach people, they want to go right into the way, what do I need to do? What do I need to do to go get another customer? What do I need to go do to get that vendor? What do I need to do to get that relationship? And I turn it on them. I say, why are we worried about the doing? Better question is, who do you need to be?
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Grow Your Moving Company podcast. I'm your host, Wade Sweikel, with Two College Brothers Moving and Storage here in the Tampa Bay area, as well as the Titan Retreats and Tighten Up training. And today's guest is a speaker that we recently had at our Hometown Titan Retreat, which was an event that we've never done before, but it's similar to our Moving Titan Retreats that many of you have been to, except this time we focused on the local Tampa Bay real estate and home services industry. Basically, our entire ecosystem that we do business with every single day with Two College Brothers in Tampa Bay on a local level. And our guest today is Ryan Bogden, and he was one of our amazing speakers who spoke on quantum leadership. And we're going to dig deep into what that topic is. You may have never heard of that topic, but it's a fascinating space, and we're going to go heavy into it. But a little bit about Ryan. He's a military veteran from the Air Force, and he worked for a Fortune 100 company before getting involved with Keller Williams and ultimately becoming the broker of Keller Williams St, which is in a beautiful high-rise office in downtown St. Petersburg. And he leads 220 agents, and they're one of the top 20 most profitable Keller Williams offices across 800 offices. And today, Ryan, thank you so much for coming on and taking the time. And I'm excited to get into this, but tell the audience in your own words, what was your journey like over your career in the military, then Fortune 100, and now leading an extremely successful team in one of the, in my opinion, most beautiful places in the world to live?
Well, first, Wade, thanks for having me on, man. It's quite an honor. Our time working together the last few months has been a lot of fun, and how we met, and then doing the event. That was, just a remarkable day at the Hometown Titan Retreat. So it was a lot of fun. Yeah, so for me, one small correction, I'm team leader of Keller Williams. I don't want to get confused with a broker, because we do have an actual broker. But
okay, team leader, got it.
Yeah, no, it's okay. I just I guess the leadership journey, definitely really started for me in the military, and I was enlisted military aircraft mechanic. Worked on, now I think they're valued at $120 million aircraft. C-130s. But what I really learned from that was processes and attention to detail, and being in charge of leading a team to work on a very expensive piece of equipment, that if you missed to tighten one bolt, you could end up in jail. Like, that was the severity of our quality assurance on these planes. So it was held at the highest regard. But through being in the military, I realized that there's more that I wanted to get out of that. And I kind of got introduced to business. One thing, I launched an online business that I ran for a while, e-commerce company that I was running as I was getting out of the military, which introduced me to this world of entrepreneurship and self-improvement, and really grabbing the universe and taking control and getting what you want out of life, which has led to the quantum stuff, which we'll get into. But from there, I studied entrepreneurship and innovation management at Temple University. So really opened my eyes to this innovative way of thinking and business. And then had the honor and privilege to work at Northwestern Mutual, which has been around for, I think it's 120 plus years. They're known, in the financial space and in terms of risk management, life insurance, disability insurance, financial wealth building, all that good stuff. But worked for them for almost 4 years, ended up leading their internship program. So got a bunch of interns to show up at 7 a.m. In the summer to go make their phone calls. And so in helping them remove their limiting beliefs that got in the way to the things that they wanted to achieve, and coached, 40 interns through the summer for 2 summers. So that was quite a challenge and interesting to working with young minds. Wanted to shift during COVID, so I took the leap of faith and I moved from Philadelphia to St. Pete, and jumped headfirst into real estate, and just found a really good mentor right off the rip. Applied things I learned from military, growing my own business, to working at a Fortune 100 company, and got into real estate. And one thing from being in the financial services to being in real estate is I learned that, unlike before, everyone loved to talk to me about real estate, whereas before, no one wants to talk about their finances, right? So I kind of found it to be a little easier in terms of the topics of conversation. And then through a series of events, an opportunity to lead the office presented itself. It was not something that was exactly on my radar. I actually said no to doing it 3 times, but someone had, a few people had saw something in me that maybe I didn't see in myself and said, no, you need to do this. And now here we are almost 3 years later on this journey, and I've been very grateful to build a really great team here, have great support of great agents. And, we've been doing amazing things here around St. Petersburg. So there's tons of other stuff in there. But now recently, in my spare time, I'm a bit of a nerd, and I've always been fascinated with how the universe works. At the smallest level to the largest level. And it's come to me to find direct parallels between the quantum world and leadership and things that we want out of our life. So, we all heard, many of us in the business world know the book Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich. Well, I really wanted to know, why is it that if we think of something, it can be brought into the world? Like, what is the scientific reason behind that? And I'm on the discovery of finding that it exists in the quantum world. So I know that's a crazy whirlwind of a journey of going into probably one of the most complex things of physics. And I'm far from an expert, but with the use of AI, I've been able to find direct parallels. And that's kind of been a passion of mine, and helping others lead themselves to the life that they want.
This show is powered by Hey Lieu's Virtual Assistant team. They've revolutionized how we run our business and can handle anything from inbox management to social media, research, and yes, even production of this podcast. Want to reclaim more than 20 hours a week in your business so that you can focus on the things that really move the needle? Use our link in the description to get started with your own dedicated VA with Hey Lieu. And thanks to Hey Lieu for powering the Grow Your Moving Company podcast. Yeah, that's it's a really interesting topic, and I am a bit of a nerd as well, and I've been kind of dabbling in a lot of these types of things, and you're starting to hear more and more about quantum mechanics if you watch Neil deGrasse Tyson and some of those almost fringe shows, but they're not so much fringe anymore. They used to be, like your Ancient Aliens. They might talk a little bit about this type of thing, but it's becoming more and more into the mainstream because quantum mechanics and the quantum theories are real things. And there's thousands of papers written by very, very smart people at very prestigious universities and fields about quantum physics. But like, for the audience that has never heard this word before, or doesn't understand like what quantum computing or quantum physics are, what is it exactly?
It is the study of the super small. It is what makes up the how does an atom work at the atomic level, at the quantum level, the fabric that makes up the universe. This has gone back to Einstein days. I mean, we've been studying this for almost 100 years that it's been around, but it's not so mainstream because it is the most complex form of physics, because our traditional physics is the study of the large, of the world that we interact with. And the quantum world, there's they don't fully connect yet. And that's where the science has become super interesting, because there's some things that shouldn't happen in the quantum world that we can't explain. And this is where we can say that no one's fully an expert on it, because there's still a lot of question marks around it, which it fascinates me even more. That it doesn't follow the same laws that applies to the physics that we know of how we send rockets into space. So there's this, it's almost like we're studying a different world, but we can repeat experiments and know that it exists, that even though we can't fully explain why some of the things happen. So overall, the quantum is just the study of the smallest thing that we know that's possible.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where it's like the more you learn, the more you realize you don't know. And the more questions you have, the more questions you have. Instead of traditionally, the more questions you have, the more answers you get. It's like there's questions behind the questions. And I think a lot of it is just, why are we here? Where did all this come from? Like, what is, after all of this, like, how does it intertwine with it? And it's a deep subject, and it's, not for the faint of heart, because it's really difficult to grapple with our own misunderstanding of who we are and how things work. And I think people get a little bit almost afraid to explore that, because they get kind of locked in their own comfort zone with their experience and their understanding of what they can see in front of them. But then you start getting into like string theory and what is it? Schrodinger's cat or something? Where is the cat in the box if there's nobody there to observe it? Tell me a little bit about like what principles or concepts we do know, and what some of those experiments have indicated that we don't know how they work, and why it's so basically just it conflicts with what we've otherwise understood.
Yeah. So I'll tie it into leadership, because that's the craziest thing. So when you're thinking about the quantum, I'm thinking about consciousness as well. There's a link to them, and the best example of that is what in the quantum world they call the observer effect. And so there's this experiment for anyone listening right now that I'm going to do my best to try to describe the experiment, but watching a video on it is better. And this is something that we've repeated thousands of times. So it's called the dual slit experiment. And so
that's what I was thinking of. Yeah.
Yep. And so what they did is they shot, you can say, photons or particles out of a particle gun through at a wall that has two slits in it. And in theory, on the back side, we have a sensor that's picking up how this particle is coming through these slits. And if it's a particle, you're thinking it should just be like a paintball shooting through that and make a pattern then on the other side. But what they found is that when they observed it, this is where consciousness and awareness of human comes in. The act of a human or another sensor observing that particle changed it into a wave. So now it went through the slit at the same time and created a different pattern on the backside of this wall. Whereas if there was nothing there to observe it, it was just the one particle coming through. So this is where, when we think of like the observation of thought, because here's an experiment where we're looking at something, the act of observing it changes the way that it behaves. We don't know why. But this is where there's this weird thing that happens at the quantum level where, like, you're telling me that by looking at something, I literally changed the outcome of it, which is bizarre. I can't explain it other than that. Like, you can go watch it on YouTube. They've repeated this a bunch of times. It's a difference between, does something go through the slit as a particle or does it go through the slit as a wave? And so what we learn in the quantum is that things can be two things at the same time. In our reality, we look at things as 0 and 1. It's either black or it's white. There's no middle ground. But the quantum tells us that at the quantum level, things can be two things simultaneously. And it's the act of observing that then forces it into a state.
That is wild.
It's hard to comprehend. So I go, what does that mean on a leadership level? Is that we need to bring more awareness to our own thoughts of self and who we are, because the act of observing changes it, and we have at a quantum level. And so you can almost think that consciousness must exist at this quantum level. So if we can just come to, okay, where does consciousness exist? And there's new research coming out that in these microtubule things in the brain that they think that there's this maybe a quantum connection there, which is a whole nother conversation. I don't want to go too down the rabbit hole, but that's where I found this. Okay, if we're all quantum beings, which we have to be because we're made up of all the stardust that exists, right? If we're going to believe in the Big Bang, which means we have to be made of the quantum, which means my consciousness is quantum. And if there's experiments that say if I observe how it changes it, that has to mean the more awareness I bring to my thoughts of who I am changes the outcome that comes into reality. And I say all that because many people are walking through life without awareness. And then you and I talked about this, and this is where like a practice of meditation brings us closer to the center of observation.
I want to take a second and tell you all about Tighten Up Training. As a co-founder, we've spent months and months and months and a lot of money pooling together resources from some of the best moving companies in the world. And we're excited to bring this to an online platform available to any mover to use at an affordable price. Tighten Up Training has over 200 videos, including mover training, your highest turnover position, so that you can reduce claims, streamline operations, give your team the tools to perform at the highest level of service that generate repeat and referral business and allow you to charge higher prices, as well as sales training, marketing training, business development, leadership. We're adding more content as we speak. We've got legal training in there. We've even got door-to-door training for the moving industry, thanks to Lenny Gray at the Moving Titan Retreat. We've seen a massive explosion of moving companies jumping on to Tighten Up Training since the last retreat, and people are loving it. And when you sign up and mention this podcast, we're going to give you a free 6-week onboarding course in order to learn how to hold your team accountable and get the entire team on the platform so that you can have the best off-season and summer season that you've ever had. Ideally, the best 2025 that you've ever had. So go to tightenuptraining.com, schedule your free demo today, and look forward to tightening up. Yeah. I mean, we've all heard about meditation. I mean, that's been around for a very long time. And I think there's different ways to do meditation. I think you and I were having a conversation about a retreat that I went to where we hooked up our brains to electrodes that were monitoring our brain waves. And we would sit in this dark pod with headphones on for 90 minutes at a time. And we were given a prompt to really dig into, or an exercise to dig into mentally. And when we would achieve what's called the alpha brainwave state, it would make a sound. And that was kind of like the beginner level, because a lot of us go through life in a beta wave brain state, which is like, it's a necessary wave state for survival, but it almost is kind of tied to that fight or flight. And so when we're checking emails, when we're on social media, when we're watching TV, like we're processing things on like a check way. But that alpha wave state is where you get into that flow state and you're able to, just lose track of time and just like go through the motions, and your body knows what to do, and like your thoughts know where to be and how to write. A lot of people get into it when they're writing or when they're playing sports. That you hear about like Kobe Bryant or Michael Jordan, they would just tune everything else out and just be focused on the now, and their bodies knew exactly what to do to make something happen. And it's that flow state and that alpha brainwave state. And that can apply to business in the sense of making right decisions and your intuition and just natural fluency and negotiations and leading people. And then beyond that, there's what's called a gamma wave state, which it's a whole other thing. That's more of like a dream state where even crazier stuff happens. And if we ever got into that during this meditation retreat that I went to a few years ago, it would make a different sound, which is almost like what they say that you can get into in certain like psychedelic settings or through holotropic breath work. But we could go, in all kinds of different directions with this. How does this tie into leadership? Because like our bodies are made of a lot of an electrical current. Like that's what keeps us alive. We know this. And electricity is essentially light. It moves at the speed of light. It's really, interesting thing to really dig deep into. But how does this apply? How does this apply to leadership, and how can we grow our moving companies with it?
Yeah. So you said one thing there that was really, really important. You talked about intuition. And so I went down a rabbit hole trying to figure out, well, where does intuition come from? And this is where I discovered a fascinating fact that I opened my talk up with, in that, did you know that your heart sends more signals to your brain than your brain sends to your heart?
I did not know that.
Your heart is a 60 times stronger electromagnetic field than any other organ in the body. So your heart is putting out, you talk about, energy. If you and I were doing this show in the same room, our hearts essentially would be intertwined together because of the electromagnetic field that's coming out from it. And so that's where I talk about the meditation practice of being quiet and listening, because if your heart's sending more signals to your brain than your brain sends to your heart, then, okay, that's important. However, the brain's really loud. And the analogy I used was like your brain's like a rock concert. And even though there's more signals going from the heart to the brain, that signal is still a whisper in a rock concert. So if you want to tap into intuition more, which is, I've heard Jeff Bezos say the best business decisions he's ever made came from listening to his gut and his heart, not from a spreadsheet. But if you're not tapped into, and some people can't hear their intuition, or they're confused by it because there's so much other noise going on and they can't really hear it. And so I think from being a quantum leader is having that self-awareness to get quiet, so that just like when you had the awareness of like, oh, I'm in an alpha brainwave, how do I know when intuition's talking to me, to identify that as intuition and leading from the heart, because heart is what brings us harmony. That's where the empathy comes in. That's where we need heart and brain to come together to make good decisions, because a logical decision on paper might not be the best thing that's good for humanity. And a good thing that's good for humanity might tank us and not keep us at the resources that we need to be able to continue to do good, right? Like if you go out and do great, but you lose all the money and you go out of business and go bankrupt, well, that wasn't a great decision. But if you can do both together, this is where the quantum leadership comes in, because quantum leadership is about doing greater for humanity, not for your company. And by doing greater for humanity, you're tapping into a bigger energy scale. And some may say, well, this is a little woo-woo, but it's not, because scientists are studying this. It's not everyday conversation, because it is so complex, because even the best scientists in the world right now can't fully explain it. But we know that it happens. And so I challenge people to lean in with their heart more, because we know that love itself is the only thing that matters. I teach a class here at Keller Williams called the 6 Personal Perspectives and Finding Your Big Why. And after teaching this class probably 30 times now, anytime in there, people always cry, good, happy tears, because they're finding their why, what's moving them. And all of them are always tied back to love, because life itself is only here because of love. When people say, well, I want to leave a legacy, that's because of love. I want to do it for my family because of love. I love to travel. I love this hobby. I want more time. It's because the love for self and the love for the experience. It's all love. And where does that come from? It's coming from the heart. So I think in order to be any type of leader, we need to really make an impact. And if you care about how you're remembered, or why do the moving company? Why make money? Why help those people? Somewhere in there, it's coming from love. It's coming from the heart. And the stronger we can make that signal and bring awareness, because we just know that bringing awareness to something changes it. We can change it. We can lean into it even more and really tap into that superpower.
And I've heard that essentially every emotion, every action boils down to 2 things, love and fear. You look at jealousy, that's really just fear of somebody being better than you, and or anger, that's really just fear. And it's like your body's response to fear by getting angry to fight or to run and flight. But then on the other side of it, like happiness, boils down to love. Pride, that's kind of an interesting one, because sometimes that's a little bit of both. What's your take on that?
Well, I think, fear is the absence of love.
I like that.
right? Because there's always, in order to have dark, we must have light. It's the yin and the yang. So if you have one, what's the opposite of the other? And so love and fear. And so for some people, fear can move them, right? And I think it gets people so far because it can be the fear of not being able to provide because you really want to be able to love. And so I think that's the difference between being in a survival state and a thriving state. If your back's against the wall and you're like, I'm not going to eat if I don't get this done, then yeah, fear is going to drive you. But what happens when you're on the other side of that and you lose the survival instinct because then we have to drive with love. And I believe that love and empathy is going to take us further than operating out of fear.
That's interesting. And it's all putting out a certain frequency. Have you heard of the Japanese water study where this Japanese scientist had taken different vials of distilled water and would write words on it like love, happiness, but then he would write Hitler on other ones. And then he would look at these crystals under a microscope and he would see beautiful, repetitive, symmetric patterns with the love related emotions. And then when you would write things like Hitler or negative connotation, it would be this chaotic non-crystal structure. Is that because we're emitting this frequency? You mentioned our hearts would be in sync if we were in the same room.
So you think, what's that energy doing at a quantum level? And it's not, and it's faint. It's subtle, but it's there. And to go beyond the water study, we know that if we hook up, goodness help me with the word.
Polygraph? Is it a polygraph?
Yeah, to a plant.
I was just about to say that one too.
Right? So plants respond in the same way. I grew up, I had a grandfather who had a big tomato garden and he played country music through a radio for his plants. And he said they always do better when I got the music on. He just believes in it. And that's an energy. That's a sound that's going out through. And it can be measured. So the energy that we emit, you can walk into it, and this is where your heart sometimes knows things before your brain even does. It's when you walk in a room and you pick up on the energy, you're like, ooh, something's off. No one's even talking, but you can feel it. That energy is emitting around us. We're all putting off this energetic field around us. And gratitude and love is going to attract more greatness towards us. Whereas fear is going to repel.
And I love that you brought that up. There's a chapter in my book about becoming magnetic. And in order to attract good people to your team and to attract good circumstances and good vendors and good customers, it starts with making sure that you have become what you want to attract. How do you do that? How do you become what you want to attract? Now knowing that we're emitting this energy that's going to either attract or repel.
So I'm so glad you brought this up because my sister says all the time, Ryan, you're a human being, not a human doing. And so when I sit down and coach people, they want to go right into the way, what do I need to do? What do I need to do to go get another customer? What do I need to go do to get that vendor? What do I need to do to get that relationship? And I turn it on them. I say, why are we worried about the doing? Better question is, who do you need to be? Who do you need? Preparing for our talk at the Hometown Titan Retreat for 6 weeks, Wade, I was really gathering my thoughts of everything that I wanted to talk to on stage. And I would feel nerves come up as if I would when I was in high school getting ready for a wrestling match. And I would say, who do I need to be to not be nervous? Not what do I need to do? Who do I need to be internally? Because it's how I believe in myself and picture myself. It's either the lack thereof or the skill that I have that it keeps you nervous or excited to go do a thing. So I think that's where we're coming back into the awareness of what thoughts and beliefs are you having about yourself, because everything in our life is a belief. And the way that you walk and the way that you open a door and the way that you speak is a belief about how you know to do something. And to put that even to greater context, Wade, you're not even Wade. That was a name that your parents gave you. And you just continued to believe that that's who you are. Right? So if we strip that all down and remove the ego from that, of like the center of you could rebuild yourself to be whoever it is that has whatever company you're trying to build to go do the greater good of society. So I really focus now with people of like, who are you being? Because if we focus on the being, the doing becomes easy. And James Clear wrote this about atomic habits. If you want to run a marathon, the goal is not to run a marathon. The goal is to become a runner. If you want to be someone who owns X amount of dollars worth of a business owner, then become someone who owns that much, that size of a business or has that great of an impact.
Before you get it, because that if you start, they say dress for success or be the role that you're trying to move into and do the things that people
okay, well now, if I'm that person, what now I'm that person. So what does that person do? Okay. If I want to run a marathon, first I need to become a runner. Okay. Well, what does a runner do? A runner eats healthy. A runner is consistent. A runner trains properly. A runner, it's not just about trying to just achieve the goal, because then you're always just focused on the outcome when it's the process. And we've heard this many, many times. The greatest athlete, LeBron James, Michael Jordan, all the best of the best. It's the process. And that's where a meditation practice, a yoga practice, it's the greatest athletes have coaches and go to practice. They don't ever hit this pinnacle of achievement to where they have to then stop. It's the continuous being of their craft. And so that's just from a mind shift segment of what belief of who you're being is holding you back. Because there's negative connotations or limiting beliefs in our mind that's keeping us where we're at. And that's where we can feel, you walk in a room of people who are doing maybe things that you aspire to do or whatever, and you feel their energy. Sometimes it's one conversation that can just unlock the next door. But I think we have to be able to have the awareness of that first. And for me, it's always going to come back to the awareness and back to the observer effect of that it happens at the quantum level. So if I can bring awareness to this and I can shift it, it means I can literally change reality and create a different path.
Most of you have heard me talk about Moversville and the power of their email marketing service that has helped us increase leads by over 112% over the last year. But have you heard of Moversville Connect? Moversville Connect is an incredible resource for all things moving. They feature an array of vendors and services and lists like insurance providers, softwares, equipment suppliers, marketing sources, and much, much more. The best part? This resource is free. Go check out Moversville Connect today by going to moversville.com and clicking Connect. That's moversville.com and click Connect and discover the world of Moversville beyond email. And they say that you are the 5 people that you spend the most time with. That's the cliche that we've all heard. It's a little bit of a tired cliche, but that doesn't mean it's wrong. When I spend time with people like you, and then when I go back home and visit friends that never left town and spend time with, people that are just stuck in a rut, I notice my energy shift. And we have a Titan retreat, and I get around all these ambitious people for the moving side. They fly in from all over the world and they spend 3 days together because they have that energy, that mindset of growth. I come back so energized for weeks at a time, and it just kind of kicks me into this new gear. Whereas if you're just going through the doldrums of life and you're hanging around people that you shouldn't be, or not hanging around anybody, maybe you're lonely and you're not getting that connection and that energy that's being transmitted from other people, it makes a huge difference. Success, like attracts like. People that are successful tend to hang around other people that are successful. We talk about that with our customers. We want customers that are affluent and successful and that are appreciative of the work we do and not looking to catch us doing something wrong and that nickel and diming us over every little thing. There's kind of a running joke in the moving community that the lowest paying customers cause the most headaches, whereas the highest paying customers that have the most complicated moves where way more things can go wrong tend to be the easiest ones to work with. And sometimes you come across one of those higher end customers that, has a complicated move and they are falling more into that other category. Well, it's probably because they're going through something in their life and they're attracting some energy in their life, and maybe they weren't always like that, but now that's that energy. And if you service a high end, high affluent customer, chances are they are hanging out with high-end, high affluent customers that have a similar mindset. Same thing with hiring. We look at that, our best employees come from our best employees because they tend to know somebody. Recruiting. We have a great service at a restaurant, and the waiter or waitress is just enthusiastic, going above and beyond. They're customizing the orders and making sure that it happens. And those, I'll say to those people, I'll give them a card. On the back of our card, we have, a hiring link that they can go to if they want to work for us. We'll say, hey, do you know anybody? We won't necessarily say, do you want a new job? Because they seem happy. They seem like they're doing what they want to do. It could be the person at Chick-fil-A, whoever. But do you know somebody who is looking for a better opportunity than what they currently have? And chances are they do, because if they have that mindset, unless it's just a show, they probably are hanging around with those people. And even if it is just a show, they're going into that character and they're being the person, even if it's for just that interaction period of time. And if they do that enough and they're consistent about that, then they become that person. They're playing that character, and they're acting it for the type of person that they want to be long enough. And it starts to realize that, hey, things tend to get better when I do that sort of a thing.
Yeah. And so I want to go back, because you mentioned something in there that, the cliche, right? Because all that was about spending time with the 5 people. And we hear that all the time. Oh, yeah, 5 people. Yeah. Well, I go, why? Why is the most important question? Wade, if you're calling me and you tell me that, because I'm in the world of real estate, you tell me when you want to sell your house, my first question is why? Because that's what matters. So I go, why is it at a scientific level that if I hang around people who are smarter, better, doing things that I want to do, how is it that I become that? What happens? And Einstein had a quote I already have pulled up right here. He says, I'm neither clever nor especially gifted. I'm only very, very curious. And we know that curiosity means that I have to be able to ask really good questions. And I think this is super important. So so the why on that, right? On the 5 people, because that's an energy thing. You're literally picking up on the energy. They're reframing your thoughts. Thoughts become reality. So if you change it, they're helping you remove limiting beliefs or see what's possible. And you start to realize they're no different than me. And it's just in the way that they think. And so when I can be surrounded, you and I right now, we're sharing we're blending our consciousness together, right? Which then if we're moving towards the same goal, it becomes faster. Ray Dalio has a great quote. He says, good teamwork should be 1 + 1 = 3, not 2, 3, because they're greater than their parts separated. Because I can see where you're strong or where you're weak, and you can see where I'm strong, where I'm weak, and we can go further together from an energy standpoint. But I think questions are so important. And now with AI, the only thing we should care about is how to ask good questions. You said earlier when you're at that meditation retreat that they prompted you with a good question. Mm-hmm. And no, the fact isn't important anymore, because if I can ask a question, I can get the fact. But if I don't know how to ask questions, I'm missing out on opportunities with my customers as to why they're really doing what they're doing and what's going to make the process more easier for them. How did I lead to figure out why is the universe the way that it is and get to the quantum level? Because when you ask why enough times, it leads to the quantum. And so I think now with the AI, our sole focus should be, how are we prompting questions? And for our life, for our customers, and also then for this great resource that we have to get the answers that we need.
Yeah, and there's a quote that I just came up with the other day randomly when I was talking to somebody, but the tool is only as good as the digger. The shovel is only as good as the digger. And the digger tends to find better ways to use that tool. Maybe they start off with this one shovel that they're digging a hole with, but they're like, if I put this shovel on a pulley system and I can get leverage with it, I can pull up a lot more dirt with a lot less effort. And I think when we start talking about AI, that's exactly what's going on here, because there's so many things that you can now do with AI. And there's companies popping up left and right that are finding new ways to leverage large learning models and other types of AI. That's just one type of AI. And I love that. And I am dating somebody right now who's taught me a lot about AI. We've got our house dialed in with the Amazon, and, we use Chat GPT to do all kinds of cool stuff, recipes. I'm like, okay, I got almond flour. I've got, monk fruit. How can we make cookies, healthy cookies with this stuff? And it's like, let's ask AI, let's ask Chat GPT. I think a lot of people are starting to use that now for finding good services and using it as like a search engine tool.
Yes.
How are you leveraging AI with not only just quantum leadership, but of course, feel free to expound on that. How are you leveraging it with the operational side of your business and to ultimately become the person that you already are, but to essentially attract these things that you are. So too, because I love that you brought up the search engine piece of that, and you have to. So for everyone listening, it's ever more important that your website and your business is search engine optimized to the max, right? To be able to show up on Google, but then chat. So we've actually gotten a few leads now through one of my partners, because he's an SEO expert, search engine optimization expert. And people have found us because they've gone to chat or Kronk on X and asked who's the best agent in St. Petersburg. And the search results from the AI, not from Google, gives them us. So that's huge. And that was something a few months ago. I told my partner, I said, you need to make sure that when people ask AI, that we pop up. So go ask AI how to do that. Because that's super important, because more people are starting to use AI like a search engine rather than going to Google, and Google knows this. And so they're pivoting quickly because of it. And so back to, so I have, whatever model you decide to use, I think it's you have to take a little bit of risk to be a little vulnerable with it, to be able to tell your story and what it is that you're trying to do and achieve. Because now I can ask my AI, what are my greatest opportunities for growth? Where are my weak spots that I'm not noticing? And so from a leadership standpoint, I'm doing that because I look at myself as an operating system. And now I have another operating system that's observing it by what I put in, and can do like a third party view of where are the holes in my life and my business. Where is my greatest opportunity to increase revenue based off of what you know? Ask me questions to be able to know my business better, to find how I can optimize to grow. So I'm almost prompting the AI to do your work. Tell me what you need to know about me to make me get better. So I think that's just from a personal development standpoint, you can use it that way as a tool. And then of course there's all kinds of other streamlined processes, and there's probably more that we could do through, taking notes on our leads to writing descriptions. To me, that's all elementary level stuff. I want to go into we're 10 questions deep, past something, and I'm giving the AI more information so it can assess and find new angles to come attack this. And it's not even so much that you take the answer for face value, but just like being in a good mastermind, that answer that it gives you may lead to another thought that actually is the good one. Because if there's one thing right now, AI is pulling from everything that's already happened. It's not so good at creating new at the moment, where our brains are still better at that. But if we're fed something that leads to us to have the next greatest thought, then it worked. It might not have been the initial answer that came out of the AI, but it's that answer that then led to another idea or opportunity that I saw in my business or life to improve. So I still think the creative aspect and that's the alpha brain wave that we're trying to get into, that flow state of creativity. And so I think that's the greatest opportunity, is how do we leverage these systems for us to be more creative? Yes, the black and white system processing of going through files and doing all that spreadsheet shit, that's awesome. But how are we using it to help us lead into more creative thought? To think of ways. I just secured, it's signed today. I was hoping I was going to be able to share this on stage, but I didn't want to share it until it was signed. We just got a $4.8 million listing, taking it over from another agent. My whole pitch and idea started with AI. I just fed it everything I knew about this property, wanted a deep analysis on the market, did deep research, had to come up with a marketing plan, and then I put my own spin onto it. And then my conversation with that seller was, this is all the things that we need to do, and here's why.
So I used it to write me a research paper, which then prepared me to go in to present myself as an expert that just secured a $5 million listing.
Wow. That's amazing. Well, congratulations on that listing.
Thank you.
And I think it is a good tool for organizing thoughts and data. And that helps you when you have that stuff organized to be able to ask the deeper questions. Because if you've got 6,000 different thoughts floating through your head, like most of us entrepreneurs do at all times, we all have a touch of ADD, I'm sure, some of us more than others, but, I know I do. And I've always got an idea. There's always like this, oh, we should do this, we should do that, da, 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 da. But if I can plug all that in and let it sort out my thoughts, I mean, for my talk at the Hometown Titan Retreat, I knew what I wanted to talk about and the things that I wanted to cover. And I created a essay essentially on what I wanted my speech to be. And I said, AI, break this down into a 20-minute presentation and organize it so that it flows. And I was able to get a lot of clarity. And then from there, obviously, I took my human element, my personal experience, and was able to then tie it together. The other day, I wrote a blog post that I'm pitching to some major publications like Inc. and Forbes and Entrepreneur, and their format is 750 words. And I'm doing that because I know of the SEO and the AIO, which is another term that I coined that feel free to make it catch on and go viral. But AI optimization, I know that if I'm establishing myself and my company as a thought leader in moving and in business in general, and I'm able to submit these things to major publications that have a lot of authority on the internet, then we could get link backs from them inserted in those articles. But more importantly, the name, my name and my company's name getting mentioned in these places will likely get picked up by these large language models when people are searching AI. And then, of course, your Google, which, with Gemini, is basically now becoming their form of search. And so it's like establishing yourself as this authority. But what I'm getting at with that is that I wrote out an entire article that was like 2,000 words. And I said, I need this to be 750 words so that I can submit it, plugged it in. And it basically took my voice, my experiences, my stories that I'm telling in this article, and it condensed it down to 750 words in an easy to digest format, because I'm guilty of rambling sometimes, and it allows me to get more succinct and then to get more clarity on my own thoughts at the end of the day, because we word vomit out a lot of things. And sometimes the most effective approach is the simplest approach, and making it understandable to the common man. And I think that's kind of what's happening in politics a lot right now too, is that it's resonating with the common person, the common denominator amongst people and collective consciousness in our society. And we've got politicians in office right now that have taken very complex things and dumbed it down so that a fifth grader can understand it, and getting these important things across. So there's like some, regardless of your political opinion, I think there's some genius to that, in the sense of being able to simplify the complicated so that more people can understand and believe in what they're doing, because people don't buy what they don't understand. A confused buyer doesn't buy. So how do we make them not confused? We might have all the best information in the world. And that's one of the problems I have with school and academia, is that they are really good at this, 500 page, paper or book or whatever, textbook. But what do I need to know out of this to ultimately succeed in life? How do we take the academic approach, where so many people think that if they can make it as complicated as possible and elaborate on every little minute detail, that makes them look smarter? But I think being able to understand all that stuff and then whittle it down to the important points that affect the other person, the what's in it for me for the other person, is going to ultimately make you more successful if you can do that. And AI helps.
Yep. Because we can word vomit to sound smart, but we don't say nothing. I think it all depends on personality style, but there's I'm a pretty direct person. And so when people are just saying words for the sake of words, I'm like, you're not saying anything. You're just saying the same thing 3 different ways, just to sound smart. And so that's not effective. But I like that. I like the simplicity, of taking complex things and be able to break them down, is that, and back to, that's what I was thinking about. Fear sells. So people back to, okay, love, we know we need to lead with love, but love doesn't sell as well because of fear, because we will do more things to avoid fear than we will for love. That's why most of us are running around in survival mode and not in thriving mode, right? Because we will do more to avoid fear. And so fear then sells us and grabs our attention more. I mean, if you're thinking about your feed as a collective consciousness, when you're scrolling on Facebook, Instagram, X, whatever the platform is, fear is going to grab your attention before something positive. And so you got to think, if my sole purpose is to grab attention and I make dollars based off of the more attention that I can attract, I'm going to use fear. And I have a buddy who has a very successful real estate data app, and he sells it to his YouTube audience. But all of his YouTube thumbnails and titles are very fear about the market crashing. Now, if you get 3-4 minutes into his video, you realize that that might not be exactly the message, but he's using that to grab attention. And big media does that as well. And so it's having the awareness of that and saying there's an 80-20 principle. Alfredo Pareto, an Italian economist, found that 80% of the land in Italy was owned by 20% of the people. And he started to find this principle throughout. I can tell you that 20% of my agents out of 220 some do 80% of the production. 20% of athletes do 80% of the work. Whatever. You can find this throughout all of life. 80% of your life looks from only 20% of how you spent your time, of what things that you've done. The other stuff, your life doesn't look the way it does because of the 4 hours that you spent this week scrolling through social media. It's the big rocks that move it. And so you think of, do you want to fall into the masses of the bottom 80% of people? Or do you want to be in the 20% that are really moving the 80%? So that means you have to think differently than 1/5 of the people. And realize that 4/5 of the content is made for 80% of the people. And we can't fall victim to that. And I think that's where back to my quantum leadership starts with awareness. It's finding self. And so who is the self and what information am I attracting into my life or allowing into my life that I'm then identifying with and then repeating again, because it's all like a ripple effect. And fear will spread faster than the good. And so I think just having that awareness of when I'm teaching agents, it's what can you do in your business that's going to give you 80% of the results? Because focusing on making your website better is probably a bottom 80% that's only going to increase it by 20%. But what's the 20% that you could do that's going to move you 80%? And that's where like a quantum leap comes in, because you can shift your life so much faster than you think if you spent your time in the areas that gives you the greater. You talked about leverage earlier. Mm-hmm. What's that thing that if I spent my time here is going to be a pulley or a lever in my life that's going to move a lot more than just increments?
What is it for you? And what is it for your team? What is that 20% that moves the needle 80%?
It's relationships. Our tag is relationships over transactions. We know we have many transactions. We only have one relationship. And so it's how can we get in relationship with more people today? And so, in the world of real estate, they use the word lead gen. A lot of people don't like that word, but so I think of it as relationship building. What relationships am I maintaining today? Which new relationships did I start? How am I bringing more awareness and exposure to us? Right? Because that's what's going to move the needle. Worrying about how I joke with the agents, I say you get in the business and everyone wants to care about their email signature. I go, well, no one cares about your email signature if you don't have anyone to send it to. Right? So it's always leads. What can you do to get more opportunities, more at bats? And that's most of the time in any business, it's picking up the phone.
And that's so hard to do for Gen Z and millennials these days. And I tell people all the time in the home services and moving that if you just answer your phone when somebody calls, maybe not you, depending on what kind of business you're, maybe a realtor has to answer their direct cell phone, but your company line, whatever you're advertising, if somebody answers that phone when somebody calls, you're separating yourself from 80% of the competition. And when I'm looking for a home service, whether it's a boat repair or a person to come and fix something at my house, it's crazy to me how many people don't just answer their phone. And so I'm on to the next one. And then when I get somebody that gives me a reasonable quote and has a good reputation, I hire that. It's just, I need this done. I need to check this off my list. And so many moving company owners don't see that importance, or they They are afraid of it. They have that fear of picking up the phone because they don't know who's going to be on their line. Is it a bill collector? Is it an angry customer? Or is it a potential customer? But when you operate out of fear, I think is why you're not doing those things that you know will contribute to moving at 80% and 20. That's why, people don't do it. That's why that 80% of people don't do it. And 20% of people operate out of love and embrace those things in a lot of those situations.
Yeah, I'm glad you said it, because if you're operating out of fear, well, what does it look like if you were to operate the other way? The scarcity, because operating fear is a scarcity mindset, not an abundance mindset. And a lot of people are thinking about there's a great book. Oh, I'm so glad someone just returned it. This book is phenomenal. It's called 10X is Easier Than 2X. Not to be confused with Grant Cardone's 10X. This is 10X is easier than 2X. Dan Sullivan and Dr. Benjamin Hardy. And he says you should never have to justify your wants. I thought this was really fascinating, because a lot of people will operate from a place of need versus want. And I just was coaching one of my agents the other day, and I said, what drives you? We were getting to his why. He's a very logical brain guy. And he goes, well, I only need to live in a 3-bedroom, 2-bath. I would want, maybe, if we start a family, to be able to grow and expand our residence and all that stuff. And I go, okay, well, let's just focus on the want. He goes, yeah, but I don't need it. I go, I don't care about what you need. Because that's a scarcity mindset. Let's think of abundance, because you're never going to get what you want if you're always thinking about what you need. So let's not justify it, because a lot of us come from we don't look at our generational traumas that were put onto us about how we think about success and money. And so if you come from a family that says, well, you don't need to have the finer things in life, you don't need to do all that stuff, well, then you're never going to have it. It's going to be being a generational break is super hard. And being one in my family, I can talk to this. It's a whole topic that isn't covered enough. And I love in that book how he says, if you want to drive the Porsche, just go get it. Don't explain to anyone why you want it. Just want it. If you want to have a bigger business, just want it. The minute you have to justify yourself, you're operating from a scarcity mindset, not a mindset of abundance. I think we just talked about this whole talk for the last 52 minutes about how our mindset's important and observation and awareness of all the way that we think. So if there's something holding you back because your grandfather told you don't need it, you got to change your beliefs on that, because your belief is the most important thing. I had a very, very smart man once tell me, he was, it was like an Ayurvedic doctor, and we were doing some health stuff. And I said, well, doc, I hope this works. And he said, Ryan, hope is hopeless. Just believe. And back to what we said. So who you believe you are, you're right. And who you believe if you don't think you're that, you're also right.
Wow. Love that. If you pick up that phone, if that phone's ringing and it's going to be your next $1 million opportunity.
Yeah.
Imagine. Yeah. How are you going to show up to that call? Maybe it's a bill collector. Maybe it's something that you don't want to deal with, but I can almost guarantee, going back to kind of the frequency situation. I mean, how many times are you thinking about somebody and they text you or call you like right then and there? You're in the middle of texting them or reaching out, and then all of a sudden you hear back. If you're constantly waiting for that phone and saying, my next $1 million client is going to call me any second now, phone rings, pick up the phone. Would you look at that? I've found so many synchronicities when I have that mentality, when I'm in that flow state, or just, things are going well. They say bad things come in threes. Well, it's because they snowball, and you're afraid and you're putting that out. But when you're like on a roll, you're on a hot streak. I mean, in any sport, you see this happen. You see it happen in business. You see it happen in relationships, in dating, whatever. When things are going well and you're tuned into that, you tend to start recognizing those opportunities when they come up, because it's at the forefront of your mind, your reticular activating system. But B, there's some hidden quantum level law of attraction, and people like to
explain what that is?
Hate on that. Yes, please.
Okay, so the idea, I said this on stage. So you think of someone and boom, they text you. So there's a quantum principle called quantum entanglement, which defies normal physics in the speed of light. Because in our physical reality, we say nothing can travel faster than the speed of light, which means that there is a latency in time delay, right? It takes 7 minutes for light from the sun to get here to Earth. right? You're moving at the speed of light, which Einstein says is the fastest thing that can travel. Because if you travel faster than the speed of light, it would take an infinite amount of energy to be able to do that. However, this is where the quantum breaks off from regular physics. At the quantum level, things can be entangled, which means they mirror each other instantaneously, defying the speed of light. And so you could say that you're entangled with the energy that is here with people. And that's why when you think of them, all of a sudden, boom, they text you. Right? Because and the way to think about this, if I have two coins and there's one on Pluto and there's one here on Earth, and I flip them, they would both flip and be at the same exact position at the same exact time. And time is a thing that breaks apart at the quantum level as well. But there's no latency. There's no difference in them. It's almost as if they just turn together, as if they were connected. They are entangled. And so when you think about the energy that you're putting out and that you are a part of the energy around you, you're entangled with it. That's why when you put out abundance, all of a sudden it comes to you. And it's not woo-woo. It happens on an energetic, scientific level.
Fascinating stuff. What does your daily practice look like to really dig into this, or any resources that you recommend to really dig into this? I'm curious to hear, what do you do on a daily basis, Ryan?
Yeah, so I love that. My meditation. So I use an app called Waking Up. Sam Harris is a neuroscientist, and he spent time in silent retreat. So he's bringing the spiritual aspect and then the science aspect of what's going on in the brain to meditation. And I've been using that app since 2018, 2019. And he really,
what does it do? Like, what are the practices?
He does a really good job of making you feel okay about being lost in thought. Because a lot of people think meditation is clearing your mind, when really it's just bringing more awareness to what's going on in your mind. He would say those who are seeking meditation to find calm is actually wrong. You're sitting down to meditate just to find out what's going on inside there, and recognizing when you're identifying with thought. And so one of his famous lines is always like, you can always begin again. So you get lost for a minute. You can always begin again to come back to your breath. You can always begin again to come back to the sensation of sitting. You can always begin again to come back to your awareness, even though you got lost in thought. But it's a continuous practice, because just like you can't go to the gym once and then all of a sudden say that you can bench 200 pounds, right? You have to continuously do that. And meditation is the same way. You have to keep that brain muscle strong of staying present. The flow state is extreme presence with where you're at in space and time. And so for me, meditation is that. Reflection, I take a lot of time in the evening to reflect. I think that's super important. Who was I today? How did I show up? Was there a conversation that I maybe could have went a little bit better? What did I learn from that? I'm always, if I didn't get the deal or something went, I'm like, well, what did I do that I could have done better next time? So that self-awareness and reflection happens because I'm able to be present with myself and sit with self, which I actually don't have it on today. A little tool that I just got is called, God, it just slipped my brain. Limitless Pendant. It's an AI sound recording device that you can wear, and then it will analyze every conversation that you had today and tell you where you could have been more empathetic or how you could have done better. Essentially, you don't have to take meeting notes anymore, because you can just go back and reference this tool. So that's fascinating. I'm curious to see where that goes, and there's a whole theory on that in a minute. And then exercise of some form, but particularly yoga. Because the stretching and moving of the body, we hold emotions and energy in different parts of our body. And so the yoga practice, there's 8 limbs to yoga. It's not just the movement of the body. It's a way of life. But, I've been doing yoga, and these profound thoughts come to my mind or get released. I'm like, man, I haven't thought of that in forever. Like, I'm in yoga class. Why is this showing up right now? Because maybe I was holding it in the hip or like a hamstring or something, right? And I stretched it, and all of a sudden now it's coming to mind. A lot of us carry a lot of stress in our shoulders. So do you have the awareness of relaxing your shoulders? So yoga, meditation, journaling, It helps because the as you said earlier, we got 30,000 things going on in our mind. Our mind's the rock concert, but the practice of writing helps us slow down to bring awareness to the thoughts that are in there. And I tell people, go journal on that problem that you're having, because in your mind, you will ruminate and cycle through it 100 times, but you're not going to write the same sentence 100 times over and over again. You're going to write it once, look at it, and be like, well, I just been thinking that 100 different ways. It's the same, but really it's a one sentence problem. And identifying the problem is half the path to solving it. So those practices for me are extremely helpful. And then I if you haven't read the 4 Agreements, you can't see, but it's hanging here in my office. That book, the 4 Agreements, has really helped me be impeccable with my word, not take anything personally, not make assumptions, and always do my best. And I think so many of us are so caught up in taking things personally that we're not able to ask for the appropriate feedback to get better. And so if we're too caught up of, well, I didn't get that deal, and when it's personal, well, you're not in a brain state or a position to look for feedback on how to improve if you're taking it personally. So I think
love it. I actually have not read that one yet, but it is now on my list.
Oh yeah, that's an easy. That was you could read that if you had 3 hours. You can read it in a day.
Nice.
Yeah, so it's a continuous practice of all those things, and saying just who do I need to be the best version of me? Because internally we get anxiety. I think, and I'm not a psychiatrist or anything, but I think anxiety comes from when we're not being the version of ourselves that we know we can be. When we're not aligned even with what we're doing, with the things that are coming out of our mouth or our actions or what we're doing, creates this anxiety because we're creating separation from the true version of their highest potential self. Interesting.
Very interesting. This is really good stuff. I know I have my best ideas when I'm running. I like to lift weights too, but like when you're running and it's just that repetitive pitter patter, stepping, you're breathing, you're getting your breath work in. If you're breathing the right way, you're not connected. I don't like to run. A lot of people run with iPhone or headphones in, or what they got their, watch in and everything like that. I might have a watch to track my running, but it's not connected to anything. Because I use that time to basically put myself into a flow state where it's just a repetitive thing. It's a little bit of a struggle to where I forget about everything else because I'm just focused on putting one foot in front of the other. And I'm getting my breath engaged. I'm getting my whole body engaged. And all of a sudden, problem solved. Like whatever I've been worried about in the past, I don't even think about it. It just pops into my head. Mm-hmm. So I found a lot of success with that. I've done some yoga, not a regular practitioner of yoga, but I definitely see a lot of value in that. And I have a membership to get a massage at least once a month, but sometimes I'll build up credits to get it once a week if I'm like, I know I'm tight and I'm aware of that. And I find that awareness because massage is kind of a forced meditation time, and you're activating those, places where there could be pain or traumas stored in tightness, in the form of tightness. And you're forced to sit there in silence with nice music for, an hour to 90 minutes and get those things kind of worked out of you. And that's, I think, why a lot of people feel so much better.
I love that you brought massage, because massage is a weekly thing for me as well. And the one day, as she was working different parts of the body, I was having different thoughts. And the most fascinating thing, and I was like, this is crazy, because I'm fascinated by what goes on in my own mind. She started to massage my hands, and the only thing I could think about, Wade, were money making activities. And I was like, your hands are literally how you interact and work with the world to make money. One way or another, whether it's clicking on a mouse, picking up the phone, whatever. Like try to make money without having hands. Not saying people can't do it, but it's a lot harder. And so it was really interesting to just have to I wasn't thinking of that prior. All of a sudden she starts rubbing my hands. Now I'm thinking about money. There's that funny thing when you get an itch in your hand, it's because you're about to come into some money. And so I thought that was really interesting. When you mentioned running, there is one more app that I use. It's called ENDEL, and it's a sound app for like ADHD. and it just makes this frequency sound. It's like a mix of binaural beats with some other stuff, but there's a move, and it gives like this higher energy frequency and sound. So I now listen to that when I run instead of music, because it's putting my brain into this different wave state while running without the distraction of music, so I can still think or have awareness of thoughts. Because sometimes I think our best ideas come when we try to stop thinking and just to let intuition appear. And so your problems, I would guess, Wade, are being solved while running because you're actually quieting the mind to let the heart send more signals to the brain and hear that whisper, and you've calmed down the noise of the rock concert.
Yeah. Really, really insightful. Ryan, this, I wish we had more time. This could be a very long form podcast, but unfortunately, I know you have a $5 million deal to work on, and probably several others, and 220 people to lead.
Yes.
And I definitely want to continue this conversation. So let's continue to talk over these things. And I just made a bunch of notes, as I typically do on these podcasts. I do them to learn, and I figure other people can get value out of them too. So I want to share that education. But if people want to get in touch with you, whether it's to do business with, maybe they have a client or they themselves are moving to the Tampa Bay area, or to learn more about quantum leadership and go deeper on several of these topics that we covered, because we covered a lot just at the surface level here today. Hopefully we shifted some paradigms and opened up some people's minds to get curious about these things. But how can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, I appreciate that, Wade. Well, first, grateful for you. Thank you for the opportunity, and your audience is very lucky to have you for all the knowledge that you're bringing them. So the awareness of that is much appreciated. And for me, so you can follow me on Instagram at ryan.bogden. That's ryan.bogden. Or visit ryanbogden.com. So I'm going to be putting up a bunch of quantum leadership stuff on the website, and more will be going out on that on Instagram as well. But I always tell people, if you know anyone in the greater Tampa Bay area that needs any real estate needs, besides moving, even if it's finding a new landscaper, we're definitely here to help with that. And we're really shifting towards helping people unlock their next potential, using some of these quantum leadership principles, because you just can't argue with them. It's in the science. So, that's probably the best way.
Awesome. Ryan, thank you so much for taking some time out of your day. And I definitely, again, want to continue our relationship and to dig deep into some of these topics, because I feel like we've just tipped the iceberg on how deep we can go into a lot of it. And as we're all on this journey of self-development that we call life, I am grateful to have you in my life. So thank you again for coming on. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been a fantastic episode with Ryan Bogden, the team leader of Keller Williams St. Pete here in beautiful Tampa Bay, Florida. And until next time, we will see you later on the Grow Your Moving Company podcast.
Thanks, Wade.
Before we wrap up, I want to thank the team at Hey Lieu for making this show happen. Hey Lieu is a virtual assistant placement and management platform owned by a fellow moving titan, and they provide the production for the Grow Your Moving Company podcast. But here's what's really amazing. Their virtual assistants do way more than just podcast support. From managing my crazy schedule to handling client communications, data and KPI analysis, and even sales support for a fraction of the cost of traditional salaried in-house employees, they're truly a secret weapon behind Two College Brothers' growth. Curious how a VA could transform your business? Check out our referral link in the show notes. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Grow Your Moving Company podcast. If you'd like to learn more about any of the sponsors listed on this show, want to apply for the next Moving Titan retreat, or interested in owning or working for Two College Brothers franchise, drop me a line at wade@twocollegebrothers.com. Moving out. Have a great day.